Okay, hi all. Thought I'd do some well, sketching with traditional media, doing a portrait, base it on a reference, maybe do a little bit of redesign, kind of caricaturizing maybe, and thought I'd give it a go with rendering with markers. Um, Something I uh, don't do often, at least not for faces. So I'm kind of contemplating what to start the sketch with. Maybe just my, well, beloved graphite lead of 3 millimeters, I believe, or two. I don't know. And um, it doesn't mix well with markers, but maybe if I keep the underlying sketch to a minimum, I can work with it. I could also try to immediately do some sketching with a light gray, like a C1, and see what that does. Well, you know what? I'll start with that. Why not? Let's locate the head, a simple egg shape, and this marker seems to be completely dry. I'll fill it in a minute. I'll switch to my graphite pencil. Make the head nice and round, and now I'm mainly looking for the orientation, giving the eye line and the middle line is my overall guidance. And well, that maybe already gives me enough to kind of build a face in here, more cartoony than real life, and looking for some placement of the nose and some mouth, full lips. Okay. And we end up at the chin, and we have to follow these lines to get an idea of, well, the jaw and the ear. The ear is covered by the hair, but we still want to, or at least I still want to, get a grasp on where it's located. Now we can follow this brow ridge and get an idea of the placement of the brows. And I'm refining maybe already a bit too much, but I can always just retrace or redraw the entire thing with some ink. Now we have the forehead and maybe the hairline over here. And the hair falls in a particular fashion past the eyebrow here and then over the ear. Maybe I'll simplify that in this swoop. We see just the tip of the ear here coming out from underneath this lock of hair, this strand of hair, and then the rest of the hair is basically fitted into a braided tail that's resting on the shoulders. And what am I doing now? Well, I'm trying to maybe get a bit of a grasp on the placement of the neck. And well, maybe I can tilt her shoulder line a bit more than we see in the reference. We kind of get this counter tilt like this. And well, I want to make the neck quite long and cartoonish, but also be careful not to exaggerate it too much. And we get the mass of hair coming from this side and then just a little bit of hair folding over around the back. She's looking up toward the right, and we'll give her, of course, humongous irises and find the pupils in that in a second. Okay. I think this is more than enough for my initial sketch. I do want to maybe look now for that other shoulder here, somewhere on this side. And I want to have a mirror view image now. Well, I can try to hold it up against the light. Let's see if that works. As the sketch is so light, well, it does kind of work. Of course, I also have a mirror and I can have a look in the mirror. Okay. I think it's looking fairly okay. And I'm just looking for my eraser, needed eraser. I'll delete some of the initial construction work. And I'm just trying to maybe reimagine the neck and make sure that I see a little bit less shoulder here, a bit more shoulder over here. And this is the neck. This is the line for the hair. Maybe one cheeky little strand of hair sticking out like that. And I've been quite messy with this braid. I guess it was a good thing to work with my pencil. I find that with this reimagining of the character and proportions, I am benefiting quite a bit from the possibility to erase. Of course, thick eyelashes. Okay, it's a very light sketch, and I'm just having a final look whether I can live with it. I think I can. So I should probably switch to my fine liner, which gives off a permanent ink that won't be smudged by the marker ink later on, which is alcohol based. But I'll get my ballpoint pen out and do some sketching with that. I like the ballpoint pen, the softness of it quite a bit. And even though it might be diluted and smudged a bit by the marker ink later, I think it'll be okay. And if not okay, I just won't show this video. I think I'm gonna change the hair a little bit. Now, this is, of course, kind of tracing what was already there, but like I just did with the hair, for example, I still want to consider my decisions and maybe reconsider my choices. And I can still change and adapt things. So it's maybe better to think of this as a redrawn version instead of what you would call a traced version. I'll reserve a lot of the lash work for the marker and final inks. And I have to say, this is quite experimental for me. I am fairly familiar with markers. I received a formal training in industrial design engineering a long time ago, where we did a lot of sketching and rendering with markers. But to apply it to more, well, organic and illustration type sketch is a little bit experimental. I've done it a couple of times. It's not completely new, but I'm still curious about the result. I'm not sure this will work out the way I, well, am hoping it will. But there's only one way to find out, of course, and that is to just try it. Maybe I'll keep the tail here unbraided, just strands of hair flowing, interlocking, coming over the shoulder. Oops. Well, maybe something like this. Let's lightly erase a bit still. See what we have left. And then we're probably ready for some shading. So I'll pause a bit and check my markers, refill them where necessary. Well, I don't have to get rid of all the lines. And after I've filled them and they're ready to go, I'll continue. Yep. Okay. I'll pause the recording for a second. Be right back. Okay, well, my markers seem okay, so I guess I'll just go with it. Now, markers are tricky because, unlike, well, my beloved charcoal or pencil, you cannot erase, so you cannot work lights into the darks very easily. It is possible with some, opaque white pencil, etc. But the general approach for me here would be to work from light to darker and darker. And first off, I'll give everything a pass. I have 5 markers, cool grays, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And markers are capable of layering, so adding another layer of the same value will give a darker hue. And this is marker paper, by the way, which is specifically made to keep the ink from bleeding and, give a good, clean result. And I'll start with this C3, so not the lightest, but the second lightest to indicate my initial idea for where it's going to be shadow and where I'm gonna observe darker values, like the hair, for example. So I'm using my reference now to see the light on the face. The face is different from mine, yet the same, of course, in that sense that we have a brow ridge, eyes, nose protruding outward, lips, and so on and so forth. So I can use the reference to kind of deduce what the shadow shapes would look like on my particular figure. And with this light gray, you don't have to be too scared. It's just an initial pass. I will work area for area. Probably some shadow is going to hit underneath the eyeball. And well, I see a nice plane underneath the nose, and a lot of the shape of the nose is actually only now established. The nose is also casting a little bit of a shadow like this, going towards the bottom right of the mouth, and that clearly gives us our light direction. Again, just the first pass, I'm trying to avoid too much blotchiness, but if some occurs, that's okay. And I want to definitely reserve a little bit of light hitting the ball of the chin. Now, the bottom lip is gonna catch quite a bit of light, but the upper lip, well, pretty much going to be all in shadow. Also in this situation, even though we're not drawing for likeness and we're making our complete own version with this initial pass of shadow, it can help to squint at the reference. And I'll see some shadow hitting the inside of the eye socket here, this eye, and also the brow. Now maybe for the hair, I'm not sure what I want to do with the lightest part of the hair, but I think I'll darken the whole hair down with some number 3 gray, because it is really quite a bit darker, and the lightest part of the hair is also, I think, quite a bit darker than the lightest part of the skin. It looks very light because of its surrounded dark values, or surrounding dark values. I can definitely go over the ear, no light, no direct light being caught or catching the ear. And with these bold strokes, I'm noticing my marker is getting a little bit emptier. Now, I'm not sure if it shows up on screen, but I'm starting to notice the bleeding of the ballpoint ink that I had. It's okay for now. If I think it's getting too messy, I'll have to re-establish some line work with my black fine liner ink first. Oh, wait, getting a call. Be right back. Okay, let's continue. Well, all this hair is gonna get another pass of a much darker value, probably about the darkest value in the entire sketch. But now I'm kind of thinking in terms of an underpainting and getting a preliminary idea of the shadow and value composition. It's probably a good idea now again to reverse the image. You can hold it against the light. I should probably also step away from it for quite a bit. But it looks to be okay for this, simple sketch. He has a long neck. But hey, that's one thing I went for, so I'll stick with it. Now I'm not sure what a good approach is. I'll keep building up the values, and I'm contemplating whether to go for the darkest values immediately now in some points, but maybe it's better to build up towards it. And by the way, I have some, black ink for the absolute darkest darks, maybe things like the eyelashes, but we'll get there when we get there. So I'm now darkening, definitely the eyebrows, and I went 2 steps darker. So gray number 5, cool gray. Maybe also the entire iris, why not? It's pretty dark in the reference, so I'll incorporate that in the sketch. Um, I'm thinking the entire lips can be rendered a bit dark as well, maybe as a neutral value for the lips. Suppose she has some lipstick, kind of reddish lipstick. Neutral value of the lips is naturally going to be darker than the light alabaster skin she's having. So maybe getting some C3 gray for a overall value of the lips, and then maybe the C5 for the shadow will work nicely. And well, it could be that I need some more of this C3 and get the values on the lips a little bit more refined. Still, the overall shadow tone is quite light, but I can just state that she's in a fairly light situation. And the contrast between light and shadow is very high in the photo reference, but of course it doesn't have to be. She can be in a brightly light lit environment. I'm going to C7 now, by the way. And that makes the fill light, the light that fills up the shadows, much lighter. Here I'm kind of using a dragging technique to start reserving a little bit of light hitting the hair over here, and I'll drag towards that. Now I do want to maybe avoid the ear. And there's also some light hitting probably this ponytail, probably over here somewhere where it's turning a little bit upward, resting on the shoulder, and at the same time toward the left. And this is just an initial lay-in, so I can definitely amend all these values and transitions a bit later on. For example, introduce a little bit of the darker gray C5 and C3. And this way I'll try to keep working from light to dark. And yeah, I think I can start implementing a little bit more of a darker value for the brow as well, and definitely the eyelashes and, well, iris part or pupil part. And based on that very light line work, I still get to shape some of the features. I'll throw in a couple more playful strands of hair. And darken the ear. I think all in all, well, I don't know if I want to darken the shadow much more. But looking at the reference, well, a lot of the ear, the inside of it, is dark anyway. And I maybe want to get a little bit of a darker tone for those parts of the shadow where ambient occlusion occurs. Definitely, for example, the nostrils. And perhaps also the areas in contact or up against the hair. A little bit in the finer crevices. Maybe the entire, well, let's see, entire area of cast shadow here. It's a little bit experimentational, so maybe it doesn't work out the way I had hoped, but that's okay. I can also look, by the way, for a little bit of a core shadow, for example. Don't see much of it, but there is some darker part of shadow around the nose and obviously around the cheek here. Now trying to smoothen a little bit of the transitions between darker tones and lighter ones. And yeah, it definitely helps to have a little bit of marker paper for this. Not even using my darkest marker, my N9, which is pretty much a black. And I'm wondering if I should use it. I want to maybe get a little bit more of a dark value in for the hair. But I can probably do that by another layer of my N or C7 and a little bit more of the C5 around the edge here, also for this gas shadow. And if the ink is still a bit wet, that helps to kind of transition from one value into another. And it's funny, I think this overall area is darker than the area here, so maybe I'm just gonna come in with, well, not too smart of a direction, but darken this area anyway. Whoops. And a bit more of a core shadow idea around here. So I can call this done, but maybe, just maybe, I want to use my C1 marker now, and I'll try to use that to very subtly work towards the white of the paper, where I would see kind of a specular reflection of light. So I'll work around those areas where I think the light will be reflected. Obviously, it could be nice to reserve some tip on the nose. And probably I should introduce a little bit of value on the white of the eye, the sclera as well. Doesn't have to be much more that's catching or producing a specular reflection. So I'll fill the rest. And the ink looks fairly dark to begin with, but once it dries a bit, it's already much lighter. And for, well, the rest of the neck and torso area, I can come in with a very loose render or hatching. And once the marker is dry, layer it again. Now try to carefully work from a little bit of a darker value on the right towards a lighter value on the left. And we're getting perhaps close to a finish. You hardly see the contrast between the white of the paper and this C1 gray marker, but it's definitely there. And maybe the pupils get darker, as do the eyelashes. Let's grab some fine liner. And do some final design for the lashes, etc. Maybe some cleaning up of some of the lines. And yeah, I also have this brush inking pen, which is nice to play around with. It requires maybe some getting used to understand how to control it and feather the lines. I'm not a huge expert, but it can be nice, especially for hair and things like that. I usually like to really stress the fact that it's just a sketch. So even in the later stage, we should not cramp up and be scared of ruining the work. And I think it's also good to decide for yourself how much you're okay with showing actual line work, especially working with a fine liner tool like this. It's not of course forbidden to show a line and get a graphic, almost cartoony look. It's perfectly fine. Let's see. I am missing one more tool. Let's see if I can. Okay, I put it on pause for a while and I went to locate some a white pencil. But wait, maybe I'll have another one as well. Well, not sure. Okay, I'll have to put it on hold once more. Be right back. Okay, I found it. Also found a pastel pencil. And I also have a a black pencil. This is a watercolor pencil, these two. And this is a dry pastel pencil. And I know of the effect of the watercolor pencils. I often use them in combination with markers. But I'm curious to see what the pastel pencil will do. I'm not sure. We'll have a look. First thing I'm noticing when returning to this sketch is that maybe I want to darken the lips, kind of get them to pop out more. And well, I can do that, of course, by going over the hole with C5 and probably get a bit of a shaded version. Well, I'm not sure. With maybe another layer of C5. I'm a bit scared to use C7, although of course I shouldn't be. But this seems to work okay. And well, for the hair, I thought it might be nice to introduce, well, first of all, a little bit darker overall value also in the light parts. And I'll kind of finish the silhouette of the hair. I do see some opportunity for nice loose strands in here. Get just a bit more, well, detail, refinement. Things like that in there. A little bit too repetitive here. With hair, I always want to prevent repetition unless it's very deliberate hairdo like a braid, of course. A little bit of a loose strand over there. Why not? Maybe one over here as well. And maybe one more. Flowing out like that. But now for the pastel pencil, let's see how this works. I think I can probably erase it if it turns out disastrous. I can kind of push back in some lights. Ooh, I have to be careful with my fingers. So I don't know how well this shows up on camera, but it's just getting a little bit of coverage and going to some lighter lights. It's a bit of a a warm white, I notice, which is a little bit of a shame against all the cool grays. But okay. You can also introduce some kind of secondary speculars in the eyes, really giving her sparkly twinkle eyes. And I should probably look for some nice specular on the lip. Of course, there's also a thing called whiteout, and all kinds of white gel pens. I sometimes like to use those as well. I just don't have one here. And, well, I think I'll leave it at this. Maybe I can give the whole shadow area one more push. I have the right marker. Always useful to check and look for all the form shadow and try to just make it a little bit darker compared to the light area. Really saturating the paper quite a bit, but that's okay. It's designed to take all that ink. Well, maybe a little bit of a suggestion of the bridge of the nose here. Okay, well, I think I'll leave it at this. Let's have a look at the reference once more and just indicate a little bit of the sternocleidomastoid on this side and the attachment of the clavicle. Somewhat, well, I have to say, suggestive, but okay. And where's my ballpoint pen now? Here. I'll just intensify this line. Let's get a comfortable angle. And with a ballpoint pen, with a bit of a softer feel, we can get this gentle curve and feather it in. So, no, I'm not afraid to mix media and just use them for what they're worth and what they do for me. A little bit of striation in the irises. Well, I don't think any of this fiddling about shows up on camera. So, probably a good time to stop, maybe use a bit of a pencil and get some darker tone also for the ear. Much of that shell or the inside of the ear is occluded. Maybe a little bit of a pushing down of the tonal value. And we could be a little bit bold and suggest some light bouncing on the back of the hair and so on and so forth. Um, I'm just seeing maybe a little bit of not enough darkness here around the brow ridge, but all in all, let's call it quits with this one. Well, I'm just curious. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna cut out this part. But can I use my dark pencil to maybe still accentuate a little bit of the core shadow? It's gonna be here, underneath the eye socket, and then down the cheekbone. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just softly, gently building up a very light layer of black pencil. Also around this ball of the chin. Can definitely help to, just show a little bit of form in the shadow area. Make it read a little bit more three-dimensionally. And, well, that is, of course, what we want. I should keep the reference close to me, see what happens there. As always, finding it pretty difficult to call it quits. Which, of course, is not a bad sign. Means I'm having fun. But it'll make the video that much longer. Well, I think this is working quite a bit. And I can definitely show this little strand of hair catching some light, popping out. Also for this occlusion and a little bit of core shadow hitting here. All right. Well, all this can be darkened quite a bit. Now doing more of a pencil render than a marker render, but you know, the two work in unison quite well. Okay, I think I'll leave it at this and just stop it now, and thank you for watching. Have a good one. See you next time. Cheers.